Thank you, Kate. And thank you, everybody, for joining me today. As Kate said, my name is Theresa Lanowitz, and I am Chief Evangelist at LevelBlue. And we're going to talk today about some research we did at LevelBlue on cyber resilience. Before I get started, I just want to say, this is my favorite conference of the year, because where else can you go and learn how to pick locks, ride a mechanical bull, and talk about application security for 2 days? It's just the best. And this is an all-volunteer conference put on by Austin OWASP. So if you see the people in the purple shirts, like my beloved Kate, Kyle, please thank them, because this is a tremendous effort that these people do every single year, and it is absolutely a stunning event. So as I said, my name is Theresa Lanowitz, and I am with LevelBlue. Now, LevelBlue might be a new name to some of you, and Kate mentioned that we are a platinum sponsor. We have a booth here. So just a quick 20-second overview of who LevelBlue is. We are a joint venture between AT&T and Wilgem Ventures, and we aim to be a strategic extension of your team. We do that in 3 ways. First, we help you to be able to protect your business intelligence through our cybersecurity consulting. Second, we help you to be able to predict your security investments through our managed security services. And third, we help you manage risk and foster innovation through our LevelBlue Threat Intelligence Labs. And we're cybersecurity simplified. So please do visit our booth to find out more. So let's get started talking about cyber resilience. Why is this research that I'm about to present? Why is it so critical? Why is it so important? This is for you. Take this data back to your leadership. Take this data back to your managers and use it as a guidepost to say, hey, we're not concerned about this attack type. We should be, because here's what people are saying. Or did you know that cybersecurity is underfunded? Here's how many people are saying that. Did you know that cybersecurity is not a through line in most project budget items? So this is data that I'm going to present to you. I'll give you a link to a URL at the end that you can download an electronic copy of the report. If you want a printed copy, our LevelBlue team in our booth across the hall right next to the Lockpick Village has copies of the report. So let's get started. How did we collect this data? What does this data mean? So this research that we did, it is vendor neutral. LevelBlue did it, but we never mentioned LevelBlue anywhere in the report. The only place you see our name is on the cover of the report. It's vendor neutral, forward-looking, and actionable, meaning these are your opportunities, these are the challenges. We went off in March of 2024, so just a few months ago. We surveyed 1,050 survey participants across 18 different countries, C-suite, C-suite -1, C-suite -2. So director, vice president, C-suite levels, to find out what they were thinking about cyber resilience. And we surveyed 7 different industry verticals: financial services, healthcare, manufacturing, transportation, energy and utilities, US SLED, and I forgot one in there. But we surveyed 7 different individual vertical markets, and we also have reports on those 7 different individual vertical markets as well. So you've heard me use the word cyber resilience a couple of times. The title of the research is cyber resilience. But how are we using these terms, cyber resilience versus cybersecurity? And I'll introduce a new term, dynamic computing. Cyber resilience says we are going to look at how the entire IT estate manages and recovers in the event there is some type of natural disaster, a hurricane, a fire, a flood, an earthquake, some type of man-made disaster. Somebody deploys a piece of software that hasn't been 100% regression test. What do you do then to bring your entire IT estate back online? Or from some type of cybersecurity event. Yes, somebody may have gotten into your organization through an attack because multi-factor authentication wasn't enabled. How does the organization, how does the IT estate recover from that? And think about your IT estate. That IT estate has done nothing but grow over the past decades. It continues to grow. We never get rid of anything. We still have mainframe, client server, web apps, mobile apps, cloud apps, now IoT uses. We have all of these different types of custom applications that we may have written. We have commercial off-the-shelf applications that we might be using. We have different network types. So your entire IT estate is unwieldy. And what happens when it goes down? Because it's not just you. Oh, by the way, you're working with that supply chain now, whether that is a physical supply chain or a software supply chain. And so when we talk about cyber resilience, it's how leadership comes together when that IT estate is down for some type of reason. Natural disaster, man-made, or some type of cyber incident. And then when we look at the cybersecurity estate, the cybersecurity estate says, this is what we are doing as cybersecurity professionals. This is how we are implementing our cybersecurity controls. This is what we're doing to protect that IT estate. But just because you put the word cyber in front of something does not mean it is the responsibility of the cybersecurity team. So with cyber resilience, it's the responsibility of the security team, yes, but the development team, the operations team, the finance team, the facilities team, others in your software supply chain, other vendors that you might work with. And now we talk about dynamic computing. This is the computing that is going on beyond the four walls of your organization. The perimeter has been dissolved for years, and we have to face that fact that when something happens to that entire IT estate, that computing that we're working with is dynamic. It goes far beyond the four walls of our organization, and we have to be able to make sure that we're bringing it back in a way that is meaningful, and we also have to make sure that we're able to serve our customers when that IT estate might be down. So today, we'll talk about cyber resilience, certainly. We'll talk about what's going on in the cybersecurity organization. Then we'll take a look at business agility, how business agility is evolving, and then what's next. We'll say that word right up front, AI, how are organizations looking at AI? How are organizations thinking about the cloud? How are they thinking about the supply chain? And so on. So one of the key findings that we found in this research is that 74% of our global respondents across 18 different countries, 74% of our respondents confirmed that computing innovation outweighs the corresponding increase in cybersecurity risk. So think about that. 74% of people are saying innovation is all that matters. We don't care about the risk that it's bringing in. And the CISO is saying, oh no, this can't be true. But the CTO, who is focused on innovation, is saying, yeah, we're going to innovate all day, every day. The CIO, who is saying, I care about the business of technology, yes, innovation is great. So across the board, innovation is winning out over risk. So what do we do to manage that risk? Because we have to manage that risk. So let's look at some of those barriers to cyber resilience. Remember, cyber resilience is how all of those teams, the security team, the dev team, the operations team, the finance team, the facilities team, your software supply chain, your contractors, how they all come together when something happens, man-made, natural, or a cybersecurity event. What we found out is that 72% of governance organizations say they don't understand what cyber resilience is. We also know that across the board, people told us that they're not investing in cyber resilience because they have a line item budget for cybersecurity. We also know that senior leaders do not understand what cyber resilience is. And then what we also found out is that, and this is something I'll talk about a little bit later on, only 35% of organizations have a formalized incident response plan. So if something happens, let's say a man-made disaster happens, you put something out into production, you haven't done 100% regression testing and it's critical, what happens? Because your systems go down, your suppliers that you might be working with in that physical supply chain, they're having issues, what happens? So there's no formalized incident response plan, and suddenly you're thrown into chaos. What we also found out is that cyber resilience is not perceived as a whole organization problem. So therein lies the difficulty in getting everybody inside the organization to say, yes, this is all important. We need to work together. Instead, what they're doing is they're still putting up those silos that we've lived with for the past 5, 6+ decades. And what we also found out is that dynamic computing is something that organizations are saying, yes, this is awesome. This is great. It's going to help me do things such as improve revenues and operational performance. Everybody wants to improve revenues and operational performance, especially once we start talking about working with partners, working with suppliers, and so on. People also told us that dynamic computing helps to maximize the efficiency of the resources that are there. So if they're able to work together collaboratively, they're maximizing and optimizing those resources that they have. And they also said that it gives them access to a more sophisticated supply chain. So across the board, organizations are saying, yes, this idea of dynamic computing, this idea of saying that we're going to work beyond the four walls of our organization, beyond the perimeter of our organization, this is good. So some use cases. What are some use cases of dynamic computing? Let's think about retail, self-checkout, dynamic computing. Beyond the four walls of your organization, you are scanning in your grocery items as you're going through the self-checkout lane, or you're in a retail store, you're buying a bunch of t-shirts, you take them, you put them in a bin, and they're automatically scanned. You don't have to scan them one by one. So things such as self-checkout. If you think about government, some of the things government is very concerned about, they're concerned about public safety. How do they determine what specific noises might be in a certain area? Is it something they should be concerned about and respond to, or is it just a car backfiring or somebody having a good time at a party? Other things that organizations are concerned about, smart buildings from an energy perspective. How can I make sure that I'm optimizing my resources? That's one of the benefits of dynamic computing. That I'm taking down the elevator for maintenance at 3 o'clock on a Sunday morning versus at 11:30 on a Tuesday, 11:30 in the morning on a Tuesday. So smart buildings, self-checkout, public safety, other things. Think about manufacturing. From a manufacturing perspective, you have an assembly line, automated assembly line. That automated assembly line can be controlled by a series of cameras and sensors that if on the assembly line process there is a defect inserted, that assembly line stops immediately. Now the business benefit to that is that there are fewer recalls of the products you're putting into production. That assembly line is monitoring everything that's going through a series of cameras and sensors. So those are some real use cases, real world use cases of dynamic computing and what people are doing. Other things, fleet tracking for transportation organizations, knowing where their materials are at all times. In terms of manufacturing, again, smart warehouses, using robots, bringing in new types of endpoints, things such as wearables for healthcare. You have surgery. Your physician sends you home with a wearable watch to monitor your blood pressure, your glucose, your oxygen intake, your pulse rate, and so on. That's dynamic computing. So, and a new type of endpoint that has to be secured as well, a wearable. Think about things such as autonomous drones, autonomous vehicles. So there are tons of new endpoints that are emerging. Yes, we still have the classics, laptops, desktops, phones, tablets, and so on, but we also have to worry about these new endpoints. So that's what dynamic computing brings us. It brings us tremendous benefit, tremendous revenue opportunities, really great ways to improve operational efficiency, but it also brings a lot of risk. Because what if one of those endpoints, what if the attacker can easily get into one of those endpoints? So along with his benefit, dynamic computing, 85% of our survey participants said it increases their exposure to risk. So the innovation is great. It's bringing better business outcomes. It's delivering more revenue. It's maximizing our operational efficiency. But it's increasing our exposure to risk. And remember, 74% of our survey participants said that innovation outweighs risk all day, every day. What we also found out is that across the board, our survey participants said, we have to deal with uncertainty. We can't possibly make sure that everything we're going to do is going to be secure. So these numbers are pretty startling when you think about them. 79% of our survey participants said their organization must accept some uncertainty when it comes to cyber threats. So they're willing to accept that uncertainty. 79%. 80% said that the environment, the IT estate becomes so unwieldy, they don't know what cybersecurity controls to implement. And we'll talk about this a little bit later on in terms of why do organizations not know what type of cybersecurity controls to implement? Why is that not part of a project plan on a regular basis? And 77% of our survey participants said it's impossible to assess how an attack might impact their organization. So all we have to do, 2024 is almost to an end. Think back about all of the attacks. Maybe you had some inside of your own organization. Think about the big public attacks we have experienced over the past 10 months. 77% of our survey participants say it is impossible to assess how an attack might impact their organization. And I'll put that number out there again. Only 35% of organizations have a formalized incident response plan. So we see that everything is beginning to get unwieldy. We're getting tremendous business benefits from it, but we're not necessarily taking care of all the risks that are out there. So now when we talk about cybersecurity, we have done tremendous work over the past 2-3+ decades. But cybersecurity, especially application security, is still overlooked, underfunded, siloed, seen as an afterthought. And here's some data. That might not be a shocking statement to you, that cybersecurity teams are overlooked, underfunded, siloed, isolated. But here is some empirical evidence that you can take back to your leadership and say, are we in this situation or are we doing better? If we're in this situation, how can we do better? How can we work cross-functionally and collaboratively and work with members from the dev team, from the operations team, from the networking team, the security team, and so on? A few years ago, everybody rushed to digital transformation. Digital transformation was something that everybody had to adhere to, everybody had to embrace during the pandemic. 2020, that was the word, digital transformation. And what we're seeing now, 4 years on, is there are still a lot of incomplete digital transformation projects out there. And the cybersecurity team is saying, this is hampering us. We're having problems because of these incomplete digital transformation projects. 70% are saying there are these unintended consequences. And we all know that we have to deal with unintended consequences on a regular basis. The unintended consequences are coming to the point where they are causing ways for adversaries to get into your systems. Whether it's through an IoT type of device, maybe you did a pilot, put the IoT type of device out there, said we're not going to do this any longer, but it's still there, it's still on your network. An easy way for an adversary to get in. Maybe there's some abandoned endpoints within your offices. Maybe there are some abandoned laptops or servers that you're not using any longer. Maybe there are multi-factor authentication controls that are not turned on. So there are these unintended consequences of digital transformation that cybersecurity teams are still dealing with. And 69% of our survey participants say that there is limited use of reporting, metrics, and analysis. For all of the work that we have done in terms of big data, in terms of machine learning, all the data that we collect, and our awesome SOC team from Austin is sitting right here in the front row, they can talk to you about the need to be able to use those metrics to your advantage. So those metrics are out there, they're collected, but they're just sitting static. Organizations, 69%, almost 70%, say we're not using the data that we have to help us make decisions. And these bottom three, these are the three that are really important to be able to take back to your leadership and say, we need to focus on these three. 68% say there are limited budgets for the cybersecurity team. So now, no cybersecurity team is ever going to say, yes, I'm getting all the money I want. But 68% are saying budgets are limited. And they're also very reactive. And we'll talk a little bit about why those budgets are so reactive. And cybersecurity is an afterthought. 66% of survey participants tell us that cybersecurity is an afterthought. It's not something that they're thinking of at the beginning of a project. It is an afterthought. And we see this all the time. We'll put a new application out, and suddenly we might find a vulnerability. Cross-site scripting, SQL injections, some of the good oldies, but they're still on the OWASP top 10. And cybersecurity is siloed. 64% of our survey participants said cybersecurity is siloed. So when you think about why we're here at this conference, we're here to talk about application security. Security is not just a group of really smart people who sit over in the corner and produce logs. Cybersecurity is not a technical problem. Cybersecurity is a business requirement. And if your business professionals do not understand that cybersecurity is a business requirement, you are going to have problems. So you have to start to consolidate and collaborate security with everything else you're doing inside of your organization, regardless of what your position is. So these are some of the barriers to cybersecurity. So cybersecurity is not integrated in the business. Remember, I just said cybersecurity and the line of business have to be aligned. You can't just say, oh, here's what I want for my cybersecurity budget because I want to implement these controls or I want to do these things. You have to work with the business to understand what the business plan is, to understand those critical few objectives of the business, and then make sure that cybersecurity is aligned with that. Again, I'll repeat this number. Only 35% of our survey respondents had a formalized incident response plan. That means 65% do not have a formalized incident response plan. When you have an incident, you don't want to devolve into chaos. You want to have a plan that you can bring out. Cybersecurity is not included in computing planning. 60% of our survey participants said that. So to say that you're going to embark on a new project, you're going to bring in new hardware, new network, you're going to bring in new applications, you're going to write some new things, you're going to work with some really cool vendors to be able to help you write these things. 60% say cybersecurity is not included, and projects, 59%, almost 60%, say projects do not have a cybersecurity budget line item. That goes back to cybersecurity is underfunded and siloed. So because these organizations are thinking, this cybersecurity team is sitting over here, they're doing great work. They're giving us all these incident reports, they're giving us all these log reports, they're doing absolutely awesome work. And they're taken care of over here in this silo. We're not going to worry about that. Whatever you are working on, you need to include cybersecurity in the project and have a budget line item for it throughout the entire project. Cybersecurity cannot be an afterthought. And cybersecurity is not included during corporate strategy discussions. 54% said that. So when you hear anybody talk, they say, well, yes, cybersecurity, it's a board level issue now. But if it's not included in corporate planning discussions, there's a big disconnect. And processes are not standard. 53% say that they do not have standardized processes for cybersecurity within their organization. And couple that with the fact that there is not a project line item, a through line item in the budget for cybersecurity. So cybersecurity is reactive. 67% said that. Cybersecurity is reactive and transactional versus being proactive and intentional. So we know that from a security perspective, we want to not interfere. We want to be frictionless. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to enhance that user experience, that customer experience, whoever that customer is, internal or external. So let's take a look at business agility. What do we know about where organizations are investing on a per project basis? So the question we asked here is, we said, on a per project basis, how much of your budget are you allocating for overall strategy and planning, network, applications, and security? The gray bars are our answers from 2023, and the blue bars are our answers from 2024. Now, if you're an optimist, you're going to look at this and you're going to say, this is awesome. We are doing so well because look at security. We went from, on average, on a per project basis, to investing in 2023, 22% of our budget. We're now up to 33%, an 11% increase. So if you're an optimist, you look at that and you say, that's awesome. But we wanted to double click in our research and find out why they were investing, on average, 11% more in security. And what we found out is that security investment is tied to external events. So things such as you have a breach or your competitor has a breach. I guarantee you every single healthcare organization in the world right now is making sure they have multi-factor authentication enabled on all their servers. And that's spilling over into other industries as well. So you have a breach, your competitor has a breach. You don't want to suffer the same fate as your competitor with that breach. So suddenly, money is allocated to say, let's put multi-factor authentication in. There's new compliance conditions that come out. We're constantly getting new regulations, and you may not be working towards this new regulation. So suddenly, you're given money to say, yes, we have to make sure that we're protecting for this specific new regulation. There may be some cyber insurance requirements. Most organizations are partaking of cyber insurance. The cyber insurance company may say, you have to have control ABC implemented until we sign this insurance policy. So across the board, organizations are rushing to meet the requirements of those cyber insurance companies versus aligning with the business and saying, what are your critical few objectives that we can be aligned on and make sure we have the proper controls in place from a cybersecurity perspective so we can have positive cyber resilience for the entire organization. There might be some type of supply chain dependency that you have to worry about. So if you're in the supply chain of a larger organization, they may say, hey, you have to have this control implemented, or you may be saying to your other suppliers, you have to have this specific control implemented. So across the board, we're investing more in cybersecurity on a per project basis by 11%, but it is largely reactionary versus being proactive and saying we are collaborating and aligning, and everybody in the organization understands their role and their responsibility for cybersecurity, from the developer to the operations person to the quality assurance person to everybody in that supply chain, internally as well as externally, understanding their role and responsibility. What we also know is that 71% of the survey participants told us they are bringing in outside expertise. They are bringing in cybersecurity consulting teams, managed security services, global systems integrators, telcos to help with networking, and so on. So organizations are realizing that this world of dynamic computing beyond the four walls of our organization, it's getting big. It's getting unwieldy, and we have to bring in experts to help. And we were pleasantly surprised to see that across the board, organizations are saying we're bringing in that outside help at these critical junctures during strategy and planning, in the architecture phase, because if you're not doing something correct in the architecture phase and you're bolting it on at the end, we know that the consequences can be catastrophic. And they're bringing outside help in for data management, along with things such as endpoint management, application development, quality assurance, regulations, compliance, and cloud, and cybersecurity as a service. So cybersecurity as a service might be a new term for some of you as well. 32% of our survey participants said they are bringing in cybersecurity as a service, which means you have the elasticity. You can bring in cybersecurity as a service to help your organization when you need it. If you need to scale up, you need to scale down. So it is as a service. Everything is a service. And if you read the technical publications these days, you'll read a lot about cybersecurity as a service. So what do we know? What are we going to look ahead for? Types of attacks. This is one of the questions we ask every year. We always want to know what types of attacks are people most concerned with. In our 2023 research, we found that the biggest attack type that organizations were concerned with in 2023 was DDoS. And if you look at 2023 in retrospect, we had a lot of high-profile DDoS attacks in 2023. In 2024, the top attack that organizations are concerned with is ransomware. And I think that's probably not a surprise to anybody. But ransomware across the board, all 1,050 survey participants across 18 different countries, they are most concerned about ransomware. Followed very closely by business email compromise. And if you look at what's happening, business email compromise is really expanding as an attack type. Yes, people are still trying to get the credentials of people high enough up in an organization to be able to falsify documents, to be able to extract funds, and so on. But business email compromise is expanding into the deep fakes. If you look at what's going on with the deep fakes, whether it's voice or video, the deep fakes are becoming quite good. Northwestern University is running a study right now where they show you a series of pictures, photographs, and you have to say which one is fake versus which one is real. And some of them, you start out and they're pretty easy because you can tell it's a person who has his hand around 10 people and nobody has arms that long, or it's a person and it kind of looks like they have a cartoon body or a cartoon face. They're pretty easy to tell. Then they get down into the close-up portraits of people. And looking at those close-up portraits, it is very, very difficult to tell whether it's real or whether it's fake. We also see these voice fakes that are becoming quite popular. We see video fakes. There's a well-documented incident of a CEO and a CFO having a video conference call over the weekend. The CEO and the CFO, they obviously know each other. The CEO is saying to the CFO, hey, I need you to put X million dollars. I think it was $25 million. I need you to put $25 million into this offshore account by tomorrow morning because we're making this big acquisition. It's going to really help us from a competitive perspective. And the CEO is even joking around with the CFO, mentioning things that only they would know if they were in the office together or if they worked together. Well, the CFO does as he's told. He goes into the office the next morning and the FBI is there. And they say, did you transfer this large sum of money to this offshore bank account? He says, yeah, I did. That's what my CEO asked me to do. It was a deep fake. And it's a very well-documented case. You can just Google it and look it up. So the fakes are getting so good. So social engineering is not going away anytime soon. So as much as we think we might be putting great controls in to prevent these types of disasters, social engineering is doing nothing but growing in capabilities. The interesting thing to us when we got this data back about the attack types is that across the board, organizations told us we are not very good at defending or remediating DDoS attacks and nation-state attacks. So DDoS attacks were our top attack concern in 2023. So even though they were our top attack concern, we didn't see a lot of effort put into saying, oh, okay, we're going to bolster our resources so that we can defend and remediate DDoS attacks much better. So DDoS attacks are still things that the adversary can get away with. In fact, there was a high-profile DDoS attack just yesterday I was reading about. So DDoS attacks are still out there. They're still prevalent. Even though it's a kind of an old-school type of attack, they're out there and they are prevalent. So take this table back to your organization. Ask your organization, are we doing enough? What attack type are we most concerned about? And whatever vertical market you work in, retail, finance, healthcare, manufacturing, transportation, and so on, we have those 7 different industry-specific reports out there. And the attack concerns change industry by industry. So for example, healthcare is very concerned about business email compromise. So they're not as concerned about ransomware, they're more concerned about business email compromise. So download those other vertical reports as well. So AI. We can't get through a presentation without talking about AI. And one of the problems with AI is that organizations tend to conflate the term AI and throw generative AI and machine learning and neural networks and deep learning all in the same bucket. And we were very intentional when we asked this question to our survey participants. We said, from a cybersecurity perspective, how are you using artificial intelligence? And then we broke it down by generative AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning neural networks. So we also wanted to find out how quickly organizations, from a cybersecurity perspective only, not from a sales effort or marketing efforts, but from a cybersecurity perspective, how quickly were they adopting artificial intelligence? And when you go to the big cybersecurity shows like Black Hat, RSA, you walk on the show floor and every vendor booth looks as though they took a can of spray paint and just wrote, "Now with AI." Is that good or is that bad? We don't know. But 61% of our survey participants said, we are taking a methodical approach to this. Because when you talk to executives, when you talk to C-suite leaders, CIOs, CTOs, CISOs, they will tell you that everybody's coming to them saying, what are we doing about AI? What are we doing about AI for our customers, for marketing, and so on? And so across the board from a cybersecurity perspective, they say, 61% say, we're taking it slowly. And 15% of them say they're using generative AI. We've seen some use cases where generative AI in a SOC to help write reports can be very, very, very effective. Also realize that this can be weaponized against you, so you have to be able to detect it as well. Artificial intelligence is where 39% of them are. They say they're using artificial intelligence. 26% say they're using machine learning. And some of this may be under the covers. Our own SOC teams, we've been using machine learning for over a decade. And if you want to talk more about how we use machine learning, you can visit our booth here, LevelBlue, back in the corner by Lockpick Village, and talk to them about how we use machine learning to really look at indicators of compromise, really be able to enrich data that our SOC teams are getting, and be able to make intelligent and informed decisions based upon how they're using machine learning. We get millions of indicators of compromise on a daily basis, and there's no way an individual would be able to look at all of those indicators of compromise. So we're using machine learning. So again, take this back to your organization. How are you thinking about AI from a cybersecurity perspective, from a development perspective? This is coming from the cybersecurity perspective. Oops. And then the last thing we wanted to find out about was supply chain visibility. And up until this year, when we talked about supply chain, most people would think the physical supply chain. If I'm a manufacturer, where am I getting my parts from? Where am I getting my steel from? Where am I getting my paint from? Where am I getting my fabric from? But this year, in the beginning of the year, we started to think a whole lot more about the software supply chain. Most of us are very dependent on open source. Most of us use the popular open source repositories. We've seen those open source repositories be under attack by cyber criminal gangs, nation-state actors, and so on. The advent of the SBOM, the Software Bill of Materials, is saying you're going to have to understand your software supply chain far better than you currently do. And the answer we got back is that 59% of organizations say they do not have very good visibility into their supply chain, either their physical supply chain or their software supply chain. So almost 60% are saying, we don't have very good visibility. So think about your organization from a cyber resilience perspective. Are you able to have that visibility into that supply chain? Because maybe something that happens in that supply chain, physical or software, maybe that is what's causing the problem, possibly the man-made problem, possibly the cybersecurity problem in your organization, or even the natural disaster type of problem. If you have a critical supplier in your supply chain and they're sitting in a place that just experienced a hurricane or a flood, they may be offline. That may be impacting you. So cyber resilience extends out to those supply chain partners as well. We also wanted to find out about cloud. And across the board, organizations said, you know what? Cloud is extremely positive, very beneficial to us, especially from a point of cyber resilience. So while organizations are saying we may have some things on-prem, we are moving largely to the cloud. So that's where the next generation technology is really taking us. So what can you do inside of your own organization to become more cyber resilient? Take this presentation. I'm sure the LASCON team will have the presentations available. Take the report, the LevelBlue Futures Report on cyber resilience. Go back to your own organization. Identify what the barriers are inside of your organization. Is cyber resilience treated as a whole organization problem? Or do people say, if something goes down, it's the problem of the cybersecurity team, these really smart people over here? Identify what the barriers are. Does your governance team understand what cyber resilience is? And then be secure by design. There's been a lot in the news lately about organizations not being secure by design. This comes back to the metrics that we were talking about from the survey that said you should have a cybersecurity line item budget through every project. Cybersecurity needs to be part of every project from the beginning, from the time you're doing ideation, from the time you're gathering requirements. Cybersecurity needs to be part of that project. And it's not just these really smart people who are sitting over here in the SOC. It is somebody on every team who understands the responsibility and roles of cybersecurity. So be secure by design. Align your cybersecurity investments with the business. That way, you will be able to have a budget that is far more proactive. Think about it. Your counterparts, they get their budget given to them every year because it's very predictable. We want cybersecurity to be just as predictable as everything else that is going on inside of an organization. So align your cyber investments with the business. Build a support ecosystem. If you can't do everything internally, and 71% of our survey participants said that they cannot, if you can't do everything internally, bring in those trusted advisors, cybersecurity consultants, managed security services, global systems integrators, telcos. Bring in somebody to help at the appropriate time. And use this data to show when and where you need to bring those trusted advisors in, because you want that strategic extension of your team. And then transform your cybersecurity strategy. Don't feel as though you're just this isolated group who sits off in the corner, nobody appreciates. Be powerful. Be positive out in the market, out in the business with your teams. Be a force of good. Don't be the Department of No, N-O. Be the Department of Know, K-N-O-W. Yes, we know how to help you. Yes, we know how to do that. Yes, we know how to make it so that it is frictionless for your customer. So be empowering, be positive, and let other people know what exactly it is that you're doing. And couch it in business terms as well. So to get the report, you can visit us at levelblue.com/futuresreport, or you can visit our team over at our booth across the hall. They have some printed copies as well. You'll also be able to find those 7 different industry-specific reports that I spoke about. So please do visit us at LevelBlue. Please visit us here at the conference. And thank you so much. And thank you again to the LASCON team for organizing this outstanding event.
Thank you, Theresa.